Good afternoon and welcome to this news event convened and organized by Nebraska Public Service Commission Commissioner Crystal Rhodes. You'll be hearing from 4 speakers today, and then we will open the floor for questions during the Q&A period. I want to remind everyone that the Q&A period is for reporters only. During the question and answer session, if you wish to ask a question, use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen, and your line will be unmuted when it is your turn to ask a question. For more info, a direct link to this news release related to today's news event will be made available in the chat window shortly. As I mentioned, you will be hearing from 4 speakers today. Our first speaker today will be Commissioner Crystal Rhodes of the Nebraska Public Service Commission. Our second speaker will be Commissioner Chris Nelson of the South Dakota Public Utilities Commission. Our third speaker today will be Barry Hobbins, who's the Maine Public Advocate. And our fourth speaker today will be Commissioner Maida Coleman of the Missouri Public Service Commission. So let's begin with our first speaker today. That is Commissioner Crystal Rhodes of the Nebraska Public Service Commission.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today for this news conference. I am very pleased to be joined by a bipartisan group of utility commissioners and the Maine Public Advocate for the utility consumers there in Maine. I put together this media briefing because I'm very concerned that there isn't enough awareness of the fact that more than 5 million veterans, seniors, and low-income families could be forced out of the Lifeline phone and broadband program. The concern here is this: the FCC proposed move in December that would put subsidized phone and broadband out of reach for about 80% of the currently participating households. Unless the FCC freezes the current standards for the Lifeline subsidized phone and broadband program, which now serves 6.9 million Americans, more than 5 million of those Americans could lose their access to this program. So let me give you just a little bit of background. First, Lifeline is critically important, and I know that because I was on the program when I was younger. Even before the coronavirus-related economic downturn, Lifeline phones were, and they remain, a vital link for qualifying low-income households needing medical or emergency care as a means of finding and keeping jobs and obtaining other government services, as well as just staying in touch with their family members. Even without this pending change in December of 2020, the FCC rule changes has caused a dramatic decline in the Lifeline program, and it's really been struggling to survive. I have a slide here that if you could just put that up for me, please, that first slide. There we go. And what you're seeing here is pretty dramatic. Since 2016, Lifeline enrollment has plummeted from 13 million to 6.9 million subscribers, with the biggest single drop of 2.1 million coming with the most recent FCC minimum standard rule change. Today, Lifeline participation only covers about 18% of the eligible low-income households, which lags far behind other income-based programs, including Medicaid, which is 96% enrollment, and SNAP at 62%. We're supposed to have universal telecommunication service access here in the United States, and Lifeline is essential to that promise. And frankly, we're breaking that promise to many Americans. All we're asking for today is that the FCC does not make things worse. Could you show the second slide there? Do we have that? Okay, good. At the anticipated 80% fall-off level, the Lifeline program would lose up to another 5.6 million subscribers. And that will go into effect at the end of this year if the FCC proceeds with its next round of minimum standards, service standards. So what we would be looking at is a really jaw-dropping slump from about 13 million in 2016 to about 1/10 of that if we do not hold off on that rule change. How do we know things could get that bad? The FCC is proposing to change the Lifeline program so that the expanded broadband access will shift consumers from a free service to one that requires a copayment. But the Commission has been advised repeatedly that this is likely to cause a complete breakdown of the Lifeline program. Specifically, a summer of 2020 survey of thousands of Lifeline subscribers shows that the vast majority of the Lifeline subscribers are not able to make a monthly copay. Over 80% could not afford a monthly copay of any amount. And nearly 2/3 of the Lifeline subscribers are unbanked. Over 63% do not have a checking or a savings account. And 60% of Lifeline subscribers do not have a debit or credit card. Only 13% use a debit or credit card to automatically make recurring payments. So that means that if a copayment is instituted, many of these subscribers would have no way to even participate in the program. In closing, I'd like to say this. The message for the FCC is very clear. We are simply asking them to freeze it and not to kill this program. Up to 80% of the current 6.9 million Lifeline subscribers can't afford that copayment, and a substantial share are unbanked and unable to participate if we move to that copayment process. The FCC can simply keep the broadband standards for Lifeline services at the current level so that millions of Americans, seniors, veterans, and low-income families will not be disenfranchised. Thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to taking your questions.
Again, that was Commissioner Crystal Rhodes of the Nebraska Public Service Commission. And that takes us to our second speaker today, which is Commissioner Chris Nelson of the South Dakota Public Utilities Commission.
Thank you and good afternoon. Today, I'm simply asking the FCC to let the marketplace work. Currently, telecommunication companies participating in the Lifeline program can craft their offerings as they see fit to attract Lifeline marketplace participants. And that's how a marketplace is supposed to work. By the government increasing these minimum standards, marketplace providers will lose the flexibility they have in their offerings and may in fact be removed from the marketplace altogether, both of which will hurt consumers. I simply say again, FCC, let the marketplace work and continue serving consumers. Thank you.
Again, that was Commissioner Chris Nelson of the South Dakota Public Utilities Commission. And that takes us to our third speaker today, which is Maine Public Advocate Barry Hobbins. Barry? Oh, Barry, I believe you're muted still. Barry, you're still on mute.
There we go. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
This is part of the problem with the pandemic and with COVID. And I think that those two events are extraordinary events. I know when every state is affected by them. In the state of Maine, we've been fortunate, but we're not fortunate in that the number of eligible households for Lifeline service has declined significantly. When I first took the job as public advocate, the first quarter of 2017, we had 33,000, a little over 33,300 subscribers to the system, which amounted to a participation rate of 20%. Fast forward to the first quarter of 2020. That number now is 17,455, a reduction, a significant reduction, and now the petition rate is 10%. It is really too bad that the FCC and others are giving up on a very important program. This is a very essential time, and time is of the essence. 15 days from now, unless the FCC freezes the minimum service standards, we are going to be faced in our respective states with a significant reduction in the number of subscribers. Could be between 50 and 80%, a recent study of the National Lifeline Association states. That would be devastating to many individuals. My state of Maine, we have the largest number of senior citizens. And it seems to me that when they adopted in the FCC in 2016 a Lifeline order that directed the FCC to undertake a comprehensive Lifeline marketplace report by June of 2021. Well, it seems to me that it's only prudent to be consistent and to allow that marketplace report to be finished and to be completed, which would examine the minimum service standards and the appropriate Lifeline subsidy, along with other areas of Lifeline policy. So my message today to our commission is please freeze this until we can have a comprehensive
I believe we may have lost Barry there. Again, that was Maine Public Advocate Barry Hobbins. And that takes us to our fourth and final speaker today, which is Commissioner Maida Coleman of the Missouri Public Service Commission. Please begin. Oh, you're muted there as well, Commissioner Coleman.
All right, these iPads are just like children. They always act up at the least appropriate times when you're doing virtual conferences. So thank you for this opportunity to speak today about this very important issue. Thank you, Commissioner Rhodes, for your insightful thinking around this. And certainly what I like to speak to today regards to connectivity issues and affordability, because affordability, especially at this time, it's important because now it's precisely the wrong time to allow changes to the Lifeline program. With the pandemic that we are experiencing across this country and world today, people need that connectivity to stay in touch, not only with their loved ones, but for finding jobs, for telework, for health related consultations, participating in remote learning, and having the ability to maintain the social distancing necessary to slow down the coronavirus. This is not the time to take away from folks this lifeline, because it is a lifeline for those who participate in the program. The cost that can be incurred would make this very difficult for many people. So I look forward to any questions that you may have surrounding affordability. Thank you.
Again, that was Commissioner Maida Coleman of the Missouri Public Service Commission. And that takes us to the Q&A portion of the call. I want to remind everyone that the Q&A portion is for reporters only. If you wish to ask a question, use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen, and your line will be unmuted when it is your turn to ask a question. Again, as a reminder, the Q&A period is for reporters only. If you are having issues with your audio or the raise your hand function, you may also use the text-based Q&A box, and we'll do our best to get to all the questions. If you have dialed in by telephone, you'll be unable to ask questions during this live Q&A session. But while we are waiting for this first question, I want to mention that a video recording of this news event will be made available online later this afternoon. That website is bit.ly/Lifeline Freeze. All right, let's take our first question. Just 1 second. Our first question comes from Adam Bender, Communications Daily. Adam, your line is now live. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, thanks for taking the question. Yeah, Adam Bender with Com Daily. I just had a question about the subscribership numbers you showed, because the FCC likes to talk a lot about reducing waste, fraud, and abuse. I was wondering how much of the drop could be attributed to efforts to reduce fraud and that kind of thing, or other factors besides the minimum service standards.
I'll take that one. So we do know that the rollout of the national verifier did contribute to some of this, not so much because they were finding waste, fraud, and abuse, but just because in many cases it was so difficult and laborious for the consumers to recertify that many of them dropped from the program. But we have not in recent years seen a great deal of waste, fraud, and abuse. Rather, what we've seen is a vast undersubscription to a desperately needed program. So what we have been seeing over the last several years, and the FCC has, in conjunction with the states, made a very concerted effort to make sure that we have very little waste, fraud, and abuse in this program. What we're really seeing is that there are changes to those minimum service standards, that and the cost of the device, and the fact that many of the providers are no longer able to include that at the current rate of subsidy. That is really what is driving that, in conjunction with there were a number of issues related to that national verifier not going quite as smoothly as we would have hoped.
Thank you.
Great. We want to make sure reporters on the line have a chance to pose questions while we have all of our speakers here in one place today. Again, as a reminder, if you wish to ask a question, use the raise your hand function at the bottom of the screen. If you have problems using the raise your hand function, you can use the Q&A box, and we will try to get to as many of those questions as we possibly can. We do have a question from the Q&A box here from Sabrina Halverson with the Dakota News Network. And this question is directed at Mr. Nelson. Mr. Nelson, can you please expand on the importance of the Lifeline program for rural South Dakotans?
Certainly, currently in South Dakota, we've got somewhere between 15 and 16,000 citizens that utilize the Lifeline program. Some of that may be to subsidize wireless service, some may be for data access, and some might be for traditional landline telephone service. But somewhere between 15 and 16,000. And as has been indicated by my two fellow commissioners, I mean, these are folks that are in a lower income category. Whether they're rural or urban, that really is not the issue. It's the fact that these folks, would struggle to afford telecommunication service of any kind without this particular program. And, my message today is, let's not change the program that takes providers out of the system and therefore takes away options for consumers. That's just the wrong thing to be doing today.
Great. And I see that we do have another question. This is from Philip Sitter with the Jefferson City News Tribune in Missouri. I believe this question is for Commissioner Coleman. Commissioner Coleman, can you say how many Missourians use this program, or where state level numbers are made available?
That's a very good question. And hello to the Jefferson City News Tribune. I cannot give you that exact number, but certainly I would be happy to provide that information when we do wrap up this call. I do know that there are some numbers that have been provided, but we can narrow this down and be more specific about what's happening in Missouri. I'd be happy to provide that info.
Yes, and we can absolutely follow up after today's news conference with that information. Well, I see that we don't have any additional questions at this time. I do want to give reporters on the line one last opportunity to pose questions. Again, we'd like to make sure that all the reporters online have a chance to pose their questions while we have all of our speakers here in one place. So as a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, you can use the raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen, or you can use the question and answer box at the bottom of the screen as well. If you are connected via telephone, unfortunately, we are unable to take questions via telephone, but if you'd like to follow up after today's news conference, you can contact Alex Frank at 703-276-3264 to be connected with any of our speakers. All right, let's see if we have any last minute questions before we go to close today. I don't believe we have any additional questions at this time. So again, we want to make sure where you can find more information about today's news conference. You can find the news release in the Zoom webinar chat box. That link is bit.ly/lifelinefreeze. Again, you can find that in the Zoom webinar chat box. And to connect with any of the speakers that you've heard from today or to get more info, you can contact Alex Frank at 703-276-3264 or afrank@hastingsgroup.com. A recording of this news event and the related news event materials will be made available online, like I said before, at bit.ly/lifelinefreeze. And I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us today, as well as all of the attendees here on the line. That is going to conclude today's news event, and I hope that everyone has a good rest of their day. Thank you very much.